You ever have one of those moments when you're standing in a room you helped pay for, with people you raised, and somehow, you're still the outsider? Yeah, that was me. It wasn't always like that, of course. I used to be mom, mama, grandma. I used to be the person they came to for everything from advice to birthday cake. But somewhere along the way, I became a burden. At least, that's what my son called me, to my face. But let me back up. My name's Carol. I'm 68, widowed, retired from teaching second grade in Kentucky for over 35 years. I've got two grown sons, Mark and Jesse, and, until about a year ago, I thought they loved me. Not just loved me like you love a casserole someone brought to church, but really loved me. Show up on weekends, help fix the porch swing, remember my birthday. Then I had a fall, slipped on the back steps, fractured my hip. After the hospital stay, the doctor said I'd need help for a while, couldn't drive, shouldn't be living alone just yet. Mark offered, said he and his wife Stacy had a guest room. Said, "We'd love to have you, Mom. It'll be like old times." It was sweet, comforting, and it lasted, about 10 days. At first it was fine. They made me coffee in the mornings. Stacy let me watch her shows. I read books with their daughter Lily every night before bed. But soon the mood changed. Stacy started sighing every time I asked for help reaching something. Mark stopped talking to me at dinner, just stared at his phone. And Lily, they told her grandma needed rest whenever she tried to come into my room. I tried to make myself smaller, cleaned up after myself, folded laundry, paid for groceries without being asked. Didn't complain about the bathroom with no grab bars or the stairs that made my hips scream. But it didn't matter. One morning, I overheard them talking. "Mark, this can't go on forever. We're not running a retirement home." Stacy, "Well, she has money. Maybe she can use it to get her own place. Or a nurse or something." They said it like I wasn't even there. Like I hadn't once worked 2 jobs to send Mark to college. Like I hadn't sold my wedding ring to help them put a down payment on this very house. I sat in that cold guest room for the rest of the day. Didn't say a word. The next morning, I smiled at them both. Told them I'd be out of their hair by the weekend. What they didn't know, I had already started planning. Because here's the thing they forgot. I co-signed on that house. Put $75,000 into it when they couldn't get approved a loan. And lucky for me, I kept all the paperwork, every signature, every transfer. And I might be old, but I sure as hell know how to make a phone call. Asterisk. People assume older folks are forgetful. They think we toss important documents in shoeboxes, or worse, throw them out with the coupons. What they don't realize is, we come from a generation that kept everything. Receipts, bank stubs, mortgage forms, even the little post-it notes our husbands wrote before heading off to work. So when I said I'd be out of their hair, I didn't mean quietly. I meant permanently and on my own terms. That afternoon, I called Sharon. She used to be one of my students back when I taught 3rd grade. Now she's a real estate attorney who handles probate and property law. She still calls me Ms. B, out of habit, and when I explained the situation, she didn't even hesitate. "Ms. B, you have rights. If you helped purchase the house and your name is on the paperwork, you're not just a guest, you're an owner." That word donor hit different. I hadn't felt like I owned anything in a long time. We met the next day. I brought a file folder so thick I had to hold it shut with 2 rubber bands. The wire transfer of $75,000 to Mark's account. The cosigner agreement with my signature, and the banks. The inspection reports I paid for the homeowner's insurance I'd covered for 2 years straight when Mark lost his job during COVID. Flipped through the pages, shaking her head. "I hope they didn't redecorate too confidently," she said, "because half of that living room is yours." The legal process started fast. First, a formal ownership assertion letter. That one was fun. It arrived at Mark and Stacy's house via certified mail, return receipt required. I wasn't there when they opened it, but I imagined the look on Stacy's face could have soured fresh milk. Next came the partition notice, a formal request to either buy out my share of the property or agree to a sale and split the profits. No more guest room. No more favor. This was business now. Mark didn't call, didn't text, Didn't even send one of his famous all caps angry emails. But Stacy did. 3 words. "You're unbelievable, Carol." I replied with 2. "So are you." Meanwhile, I didn't just sit around knitting and drinking tea. I got to work. I called the utility company's guess, whose name was still on the electric account. I reviewed property tax records guess, who made the last 3 payments. I even found old photos from when we painted the nursery for Lily Me, on a ladder, roller in hand. They thought I'd fade away, but instead, I was sharpening every edge they gave me over the years. Every time they asked for help, every time I signed a check, every "we'll pay you back next month," I had the receipts. And now, so did my lawyer. We gave them 30 days to respond. 20-8 days passed. Then came a voicemail from Mark. His voice was tight. "Cold, Mom. Look, this whole legal thing, it's gone too far. You need to stop this. It's embarrassing." I listened to it twice. Then I forwarded it to Sharon. She laughed and said, "Embarrassment isn't a legal defense." On day 29, their response arrived. A grudging agreement to enter mediation. They wanted to avoid court. Keep it private. Settle it like family. I agreed, but not because I cared about their dignity. I agreed because I knew exactly how to win with paperwork, with patience, and with poise. Because unlike them, I don't need to raise my voice to make a statement. Sometimes silence, wrapped in legal envelopes, is louder than any fight. Mediation took place in a small office suite, above a dentist's office. Not exactly glamorous, but it had strong coffee and stronger Wi-Fi, so no complaints from me. Mark showed up in a wrinkled polo shirt and jeans. Stacy came dressed like she was attending a deposition on reality TV, overacted, confident. I wore my navy blazer, the same one I wore to Dan's funeral. I don't know why. Maybe because it reminded me of when people still respected me. The mediator was a kind-looking woman named Julia. Neutral smile, clipboard, no-nonsense tone. I liked her right away. We each sat at separate tables, with our attorneys between us. Julia opened with, "We're here to find a path forward. Let's start with acknowledgement." Mark leaned forward. "I just want to say, this whole thing has been blown out of proportion. We never meant for Mom to feel excluded." I looked at him. Not angry, not sad, just done. So I said, "It's not about feelings, Mark. It's about facts." And I brought mine. Sharon slid a thick binder across the table. Dividers, dates, signatures, printouts. It landed with a solid thump that seemed to echo through Stacy's soul. They flipped through a few pages. The color drained from Stacy's face. $75,000, she whispered, plus property tax, plus home insurance, plus the cosigner liability you left me with, Sharon added, calmly, ruthlessly. The room went quiet after an hour of Bach. Julia made it plain. Either buy out her 50% share at market value, or agree to sell the house. Simple. Mark ran his hand through his hair. "We can't just come up with $180,000, like magically." I almost smiled, because I knew they couldn't. They had refinanced last year, maxed out the equity, bought a boat they couldn't afford, and took a trip to Hawaii they never paid off. And me, I had been paying the property taxes while they were sipping coconut cocktails. At the end of mediation, they caved. Not all at once. Slowly, like a house settling after a long storm. They agreed to list the house, to split the profits, to let me have a say in the real estate agent. Sharon's cousin. Bless her efficient little heart. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I just signed the paperwork and stood up. As I gathered my bag, Stacy spoke, voice flat. "You're tearing this family apart." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, you did that." I just stopped pretending otherwise. The house hit the market. 2 weeks later, it sold in 5 days. The housing market may be unpredictable, but everyone wants a 3-bed in a good school district with solar panels and a finished basement. My share, $192,000 after fees. They moved into a rental on the other side of town. I heard through the grapevine that Lily started asking questions. Why did Grandma move out? Why did the neighbors stop waving? Kids know, even when adults lie. Kids always know. I sent Lily a birthday card with a bookstore gift card and a note that said, There's always room for you at my table. I used part of my settlement to buy a small cottage in a 55-plus community just outside of Louisville. 2 bedrooms, big windows, a porch swing piece. I filled it with things I chose, not hand-me-downs, not leftovers, not whatever fits. My name was the only one on the deed, and it felt good. Not because I won, but because I remembered who I was before I started asking permission to exist in a house I helped build. You ever sit in silence so thick, it feels like it's hugging you? Not the lonely kind. Not the kind where you're waiting for someone to call or check in. I mean the kind that belongs to you. The kind you earned. That's the kind I have now. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't come wrapped in a bow or tied to a court ruling. It came slowly, like healing always does. The first morning in my new house, I cried, brushing my teeth, not because I was sad but because the toothbrush holder was mine. I picked it out. It matched the hand towels. And for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't living in borrowed space. I was home, on my own terms. My name is still Carol. I'm still 68, still a mother. But I no longer define myself by how useful I am to other people. You see, somewhere along the way, women of my generation got taught that our value was in what we gave away. We weren't taught boundaries. We were taught casseroles, sacrifice, and staying quiet when we were hurting. We were taught to take pride in holding it together, especially when nobody noticed how tired we were. But here's the truth. I've come to understand. You can love people and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still never let them back into your house. And sometimes, the best kind of love is the kind you give to yourself. I think back sometimes to when Mark was little. He used to cling to my leg when I dropped him off at preschool, tears running down his cheeks. He hated being apart from me. Now he couldn't wait to shove me out the door. That stings. Even now, I won't lie. There's a wound there that probably won't ever fully close. But I don't live in that wound anymore. I visit it sometimes, acknowledge it, then I return to my life, the one I built from the wreckage. People ask me what changed. Here's what I tell them. I stopped waiting for people to choose me. I chose myself. I stopped explaining why I deserved respect and just started expecting it. I stopped keeping the peace at the cost of my sanity. And when my son said, "We're not running a retirement home," I realized I wasn't asking for a bidet, was asking to matter. And he answered me, so I answered back with paperwork, with power, with a polite but permanent goodbye. My cottage isn't fancy, but it's perfect. I painted the front door yellow, hung up wind chimes that sound like laughter on windy days. My neighbors wave when I walk by. The mailman knows my name. I get more joy from potting flowers than I ever did from walking on eggshells. I host a monthly game night for women over 60. We call it Queens Without Castles. We play cards, drink wine, and talk about our lives, our real lives, the messy ones, the brave ones, not the ones we were told to smile through. Lily still writes me. Sometimes, she even calls me the cool grandma. We talk about books, how school's going, and whether I ever figured out how to use Instagram. I haven't, and once, she said something that nearly undid me. She said, "Grandma, you're the only one who listens without trying to fix me." That's the thing. I don't want to fix anybody anymore. I just want to be still, to be seen, to be free. As for Mark and Stacy, well, last I heard, they're renting a condo with no yard. Mark hasn't spoken to me since mediation. Stacy blocked me on Facebook. And you know what? That's okay. I don't miss who they became. I miss who they used to be, but I also know I don't owe myself to a memory. If you're still watching, maybe you're not a 68-year-old woman. Maybe you're 38, or 28, or 18. Maybe you've never had to sleep in a guest room that felt more like exile than welcome. Maybe you've never heard your own child say, "We don't have room for you." But maybe you know what it feels like to be invisible in a place you once called home. If that's you, listen close. You are not too much. You are not too old. And you are absolutely not a burden. You are a storm someone underestimated. You are a lighthouse someone stopped noticing. You are still here, and you are still you. I didn't get justice by screaming. I didn't burn anything down. I just remembered who I was. And I wrote it in ink, this time, not in favors or silence, or sacrificed Sundays. I am not furniture to be moved when it's inconvenient. I am not backup childcare or an emergency fund. I am not mom only when you need something. I am Carol, and I'm done apologizing for existing. If this story spoke to you really, spoke to you, then please, give it a like. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Subscribe if you want more stories that remind you of your strengths, because this isn't just my story. It's every woman's story who's ever been told she was too much, too old, or in the way, or not in the way. We are the way.